In a cosmos where advanced civilizations had grown adept at playing probability games with every conceivable outcome, humanity remained the newcomer on the galactic stage. The Galactic Coalition, a vast alliance of thousands of species, had grudgingly accepted Earth into its ranks just 30 years prior, after humans narrowly escaped self-destruction through climate recovery and the dismantling of nuclear arsenals. Still, humans lingered near the bottom of the cosmic hierarchy, regarded as little more than clever primates who had learned to avoid catastrophic mistakes. Greg Jordan was a living testament to humanity's modest status. Despite earning an engineering degree from the institution once known as MIT, he now spent his days tending to the waste management systems aboard Minerva Station, the Coalition's premier deep space outpost on the fringes of the Orion Arm. In plain terms, he unclogged alien sanitation units and scraped biofilm from recycling tanks. "Another glorious day," Greg muttered, squeezing into a narrow maintenance shaft, his tool belt clinking against his hips. His voice reverberated in the tight metal corridor. 4 years studying advanced xenoengineering, and here I am, elbow-deep in the waste of 17 different species. Should have been a novelist. The station's AI piped up through his earpiece. "Maintenance Technician Jordan, please adjust your trajectory. You are approaching Sector 7G, currently under emergency lockdown." Greg halted, bracing himself against a junction. Lockdown? Nobody mentioned a lockdown. "I've got 3 overflow valves to swap out before my shift ends." "Priority alert issued at 0743 hours, the AI replied. "All non-essential personnel must remain in designated safe zones." "And what's this emergency about?" Greg asked, reversing course with an irritated grunt. The AI's tone stayed calm. "Unidentified anomalous entity detected within station boundaries. Suspected juvenile apex predator. Security Protocol Omega-9 is in effect." Greg nearly fumbled his wrench. "Wait, apex predator? As in the star-devouring terrors that give the Coalition nightmares?" "Affirmative. Please proceed to the nearest safety bunker." But as Greg began inching backward, the shaft's lights flickered ominously. The station's artificial gravity stuttered, causing his tools to float briefly before crashing back to the floor in a symphony of clangs. "Perfect," Greg sighed. "Absolutely perfect." The AI's voice returned, now laced with static. "Alert. Power fluctuations detected in Sector 7G through 7J. Maintenance Technician Jordan, your biometric signature indicates you are within the quarantine zone. Please hold position for emergency extraction." "I was trying to leave," Greg protested, but the comms had gone silent. With the lights still flickering, he had no choice but to follow the shaft to its nearest exit, which led directly into one of the station's auxiliary power storage rooms. As the hatch slid open, Greg sensed something amiss. The room glowed with an eerie, pulsing light that didn't come from standard emergency fixtures. Cautiously, he emerged from the shaft. There, hovering near a backup fusion cell, was a swirling orb of radiant energy, no larger than a beach ball. It shimmered with colors Greg couldn't name, hues that seemed to dance between ultraviolet and gamma rays, yet were somehow visible. Tendrils of light extended from its core, delicately probing the fusion cell's containment field. What caught Greg's attention wasn't the entity's alien beauty, but how it trembled and shrank whenever the station's alarms blared. It reminded him of a frightened animal cowering in a too bright, too loud space. "So, you're the fearsome apex predator everyone's fleeing from?" Greg whispered, keeping his voice soft. "You don't look like a cosmic terror. You look lost." The glowing orb quivered at his voice, its tendrils retracting briefly before cautiously reaching out again, this time toward Greg. In that moment, as the entity's light dimmed to a curious flicker, Greg felt a stark contrast between the galaxy-wide dread its kind supposedly inspired and the vulnerable creature before him. "Are you really so terrifying?" he murmured, taking a tentative step forward. The security alarms roared again, signaling the approach of the station's armed response team. Greg Jordan was about to discover just how much trouble one could stumble into by being trapped with the offspring of the galaxy's most feared predators. The luminous entity flared brighter as the alarms intensified, its tendrils thrashing in frantic arcs. Greg pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath as one tendril passed inches from his face. It wasn't attacking, at least, it didn't seem to be. The movements felt panicked, not aggressive. "Hey, easy now," Greg whispered, feeling absurd for speaking to it like a skittish pet. Yet something about its behavior struck him as inherently youthful. This wasn't a world ender, not yet. It was a frightened child. The entity darted toward the fusion cell, its form stretching into a jellyfish-like shape as it enveloped the containment field. The barrier crackled briefly before failing, and the creature began to feed. "No, no, no," Greg muttered, fumbling for his comm unit. "Station, we've got a containment breach in auxiliary power storage. The visitor is tapping the fusion cell directly." No response came through the static haze. "Fantastic!" The creature continued absorbing energy, its glow intensifying until Greg had to shield his eyes. When it finally detached from the now-drained cell, it seemed more solid, its movements more deliberate as it hovered in the room's center. Greg found himself backed against the wall, gripping his only weapon, a hydrospanner. "Stay back, I've got—" "Well, it's basically a fancy wrench, but I'm not afraid to swing it." The entity paused, then drifted closer, its light softening to a gentle glow. It extended a tendril toward the spanner, almost curiously. "No touching," Greg said firmly, waving the tool. "This is my livelihood, pal. Without it, I can't fix the sanitation systems. If I can't fix them, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, I can't afford to eat." The entity retracted its tendril but lingered nearby, its pulsations forming a pattern that almost mimicked breathing. From the corridor outside, Greg heard the heavy footsteps of the security team approaching. In a moment he'd later call temporary insanity, he made a snap decision. "Listen," he whispered to the creature, "those folks out there aren't coming to greet you. They're bringing containment fields and maybe worse. So unless you want to experience coalition-grade restraints, you might want to hide." The entity bobbed in place, showing no sign it understood. Greg sighed, glancing around before spotting his toolkit. He popped open the largest compartment and cleared out the tools. "In here, quick!" To his astonishment, the creature compressed itself, slipping into the toolkit just as the storage room's door slid open. 6 security officers in coalition armor stormed in, weapons raised. "Maintenance Technician Jordan," the lead officer barked through his helmet. "Step away from the wall. Have you encountered the anomalous entity?" Greg clutched his toolkit tightly. "Anomalous entity? No, sir. Just here to fix the backup systems after a power surge. Probably a glitch in the primary grid." He forced a casual shrug. "You know how these old stations are. Always something breaking." The officer's helmet tilted slightly. "Our scanners detected unusual energy signatures in this exact location." "Likely the fusion cell," Greg suggested, gesturing to the depleted unit. "It's completely drained. Could have triggered your alarms." The security team swept the room while Greg stood rigid, acutely aware of the faint warmth radiating from his toolkit and the occasional soft ping as something inside brushed against the remaining tools. "All clear," one officer announced. "No sign of the target entity." The lead officer fixed his gaze on Greg. "Report to decontamination immediately, Technician Jordan. Full spectrum scan. If you recall anything unusual, report it to station security." "Yes, sir, will do." Greg nodded eagerly, edging toward the exit. Once in the corridor, with the security team moving to the next sector, Greg exhaled slowly. He lowered the toolkit and whispered, They're gone, but you've got to stay quiet, okay? I don't know why I'm helping you. The toolkit's lid creaked open slightly, and a soft glow spilled out. No, Greg hissed, snapping it shut. Not yet. Let me get somewhere safe first. The toolkit vibrated gently, almost like a purr. This is insane, Greg muttered, hurrying through the corridors, avoiding main pathways. I'm harboring an intergalactic fugitive in my toolbox. The Coalition Handbook definitely doesn't cover this. By the time he reached his cramped, single-occupancy quarters, befitting his low rank, he was drenched in sweat. He set the toolkit on his narrow bed and cautiously opened the lid. The creature emerged slowly, its light dimmed to a soft blue. It hovered above the box, tendrils gently exploring the confines of Greg's room. Okay, Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. I've probably just violated about 17 Coalition security protocols. So, what now? The entity drifted toward Greg's personal terminal, where his half-eaten breakfast sat forgotten. It extended a tendril toward his coffee mug, still holding a remnant of the morning's caffeine. I wouldn't, Greg warned. That stuff's barely tolerable for humans. For you, it's probably toxic. But the creature dipped a tendril into the liquid. It recoiled instantly, flashing a violent red before settling back to a calmer blue, its tendrils wrapping tightly around its core. Told you, Greg chuckled despite himself. Not everything's edible, even for whatever you are. The creature moved away from the coffee, drifting instead toward Greg's standard-issue emergency kit on the wall. It hovered near the radiation warning symbol. Greg frowned, then had a realization. Wait, you're not just craving fusion energy. You're after radiation, aren't you? He carefully opened the kit and removed a small radiation detection badge, designed to change color when exposed to hazardous levels and containing a trace of radioactive material for calibration. The creature's tendrils reached eagerly for the badge. Easy, Greg said, holding it out of reach. If I give you this, you have to promise not to tear my room apart, looking for more. Deal? The entity pulsed once, its glow brightening briefly. Greg tentatively offered the badge, and the creature delicately wrapped a tendril around it. The badge disintegrated almost instantly, dissolving into the creature's radiant form. The entity pulsed with satisfied light, shifting to a warm golden hue. Well, Greg sighed, slumping onto his bed, I guess I'm officially feeding an apex predator. Mom would be so proud. His comm unit buzzed, startling him. The station security chief's voice crackled through. All personnel remain vigilant. The anomalous entity is still at large. Report any unusual energy fluctuations immediately. Sector-by-sector search continues. Greg glanced at the contentedly glowing creature now hovering near his ceiling. This is going to be a long day. Over the next few hours, Greg worked to establish a routine with his unexpected guest. He found that the creature could be somewhat contained by fashioning a makeshift nest from his spare uniform, lined with additional radiation badges scavenged from empty quarters nearby. The entity seemed to enjoy this setup, settling into the fabric and pulsing with a gentle, almost drowsy rhythm after consuming each new radiation source. You need a name, Greg mused, watching it from his desk chair. I can't keep calling you Hey You or Glowy Doomball. The creature extended a tendril lazily toward him. How about Nova? You remind me of a little star. The entity's glow briefly shifted to a vibrant purple before returning to gold. Nova it is, Greg nodded, feeling slightly absurd for naming something that might one day devour entire star systems. His door chime rang suddenly, causing both Greg and Nova to freeze. The creature retreated to its nest, dimming its light to near invisibility. Technician Jordan, came a sharp voice through the intercom. This is Station Commander Zilaw. Open your quarters for inspection immediately. Greg's heart sank. Zilaur, a Vespidian, a hyper-rational insectoid species known for strict adherence to protocol, was not someone he could charm or deceive. "Just a moment, Commander," Greg called, frantically searching for a better hiding spot for Nova. Finding none, he whispered urgently to the dim glow in the corner, "Stay completely still and as dark as you can." He opened the door to find Commander Zilor's imposing form filling the doorway. Nearly 7 feet tall, with gleaming exoskeletal plates and compound eyes that missed nothing, the commander was intimidating even on a good day. "Technician Jordan," Zalar's mandibles clicked as he spoke. "Security logs show you were in Sector 7G when the anomalous entity was detected, yet you reported nothing unusual." Greg tried to meet the commander's gaze, unsure which of the Vespidians, many eyes to focus on. "As I told the security team, Commander, I was just addressing power fluctuations, routine maintenance." Zilor's antennae twitched skeptically. "Fusion cell depletion is not routine, Technician. Our readings indicate a complete energy drain consistent with Class 9 consumption patterns." "These old cells are always glitchy," Greg shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant despite his racing pulse. "Just last week I replaced 3 in the Western Quadrant after they discharged unexpectedly." The commander's head tilted. "There is no record of such maintenance." I haven't filed the paperwork yet," Greg stammered. Behind Zilor, 2 security officers scanned the room with handheld devices. Greg's eyes flicked nervously to the nest, where Nova remained mercifully dim and motionless. One officer approached the nest, scanner extended. Greg held his breath. The scanner sparked and died in the officer's hand. "Equipment malfunction," the officer reported, shaking the device. Zalaur's compound eyes narrowed. "Technician Jordan, are you aware that harboring a dangerous entity violates 17 coalition protocols and could result in termination or imprisonment?" "I'd never," Greg began, but a sudden power fluctuation plunged the room into darkness for 3 seconds. When the lights returned, Zilaur was staring just above Greg's left shoulder. Greg turned slowly to find Nova hovering there, fully illuminated and pulsing with curious light. "Ah," Greg said weakly, "I can explain." "No explanation needed," Zalor replied, mandibles clicking rapidly as he backed toward the door. "Security, implement containment protocol Theta 3 immediately." One officer raised a net launcher, but before he could fire, Nova touched the weapon with a tendril, disabling it along with every electronic device the team carried. "Wait!" Greg stepped between Nova and the commander. "Don't hurt it. It's not attacking, it's just scared." "That entity," Zalor's voice rose, "is an apex predator juvenile. Its kind consumes stars, Technician Jordan. Entire civilizations have perished to them." "Maybe so," Greg countered, "but this one hasn't harmed anyone. It's just hungry and lost." Nova drifted closer, its tendrils curling slightly around Greg's shoulder in what seemed protective. The commander's eyes darted between them. "Technician, step away from that creature now." "With respect, Commander," Greg said, surprised by his own boldness, "I think I understand what it needs. Give me time to work with it. If I can keep it calm and contained, isn't that better than provoking a defensive reaction?" Zalar's antennae vibrated with agitation. "You are a waste management technician." "Exactly," Greg seized the opening. "I'm the only one on this station qualified to handle hazardous materials. I've got tools, skills, and compassion." Even to his own ears the argument sounded thin, but Nova chose that moment to emit gentle pulses that somehow conveyed affection, or at least non-aggression. Zelor's scientific curiosity briefly overrode his protocol-driven mindset. "You believe you can communicate with it?" "We're figuring it out," Greg said, gently patting a tendril draped over his shoulder like an affectionate pet. "It responds to calmness and kindness." For a long moment, Zalor seemed to weigh probabilities, his antennae twitching in deep thought. 24 hours, he finally declared. You have 1 day to prove this entity can be safely contained and poses no immediate threat to Minerva Station. If I'm not satisfied, I'll notify Coalition High Command, who will likely deploy permanent measures. Greg swallowed hard. Thank you, Commander. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, Zelor replied, retreating. Security will be stationed outside. Do not leave. As the door closed, Greg exhaled deeply and turned to Nova, now bobbing contentedly at eye level. Well, little Star Eater, he sighed, you've got me confined with a cosmic death sentence over our heads. Hope you appreciate the irony. I've gone from waste management to babysitting the galaxy's most dangerous infant. Nova pulsed brightly, tapping Greg's nose with a tendril. Despite everything, Greg couldn't help but smile. 18 hours into their confinement, Greg had made surprising progress with Nova. Through light pulses and tendril movements, they developed a basic communication system. 1 pulse for yes, 2 for no, and a circular tendril motion for confusion or questions. The creature also displayed remarkable abilities beyond energy consumption. When Greg accidentally dropped his favorite mug, a souvenir from Earth with the defunct NASA logo, Nova extended a tendril, somehow halting the mug's fall and gently returning it to the counter. Gravity manipulation, Greg murmured, awestruck. You can bend space-time. Nova pulsed once. Yes. It demonstrated further by floating Greg's stylus across the room. That's incredible, Greg laughed as Nova playfully orbited the stylus around his head. You're breaking physics for fun. A door chime interrupted their experiment. Dr. Voss, the station's xenobiologist, entered, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair in a tight bun, exuding no-nonsense authority. Technician Jordan, she nodded curtly, carrying a case of equipment. Commander Zelor has authorized non-invasive scans of your guest. Nova retreated slightly, hovering protectively near Greg. It's okay, Greg reassured both Nova and Voss. Dr. Voss is just going to examine you. No harm done. Voss raised an eyebrow. You speak to it like it understands. It does, Greg said firmly. We've established basic communication. Skeptical, Voss set up her equipment. I need readings on its energy signature, radiation output, and, if possible, a sample of its outer luminescence. Nova's glow darkened to a wary amber as Voss approached with a scanner. Nova, Greg said softly, this will help prove you're not dangerous. You named it, Voss noted, pausing. Seemed rude not to, Greg shrugged. Voss's expression softened slightly. Perhaps you're onto something. Personification can bridge gaps across species. She addressed Nova directly. Hello, Nova. May I scan you? To Greg's surprise, Nova extended a tendril, its color shifting to a curious blue-green. Voss conducted her tests, her scientific detachment giving way to wonder as her instruments recorded Nova's unique properties. Fascinating, she murmured after nearly an hour. It's not just consuming energy, it's transmuting it, converting matter to energy and back at will. She looked at Greg. It's a living quantum processor. The potential applications are limitless. So, not a mindless planet eater? Greg asked hopefully. Voss shook her head. Far from it. Its neural patterns are incredibly complex, resembling those of highly intelligent species, though unlike anything I've seen. She turned to Nova. Would you allow a small sample of your outer energy field? Nova pulsed twice. No, and retreated behind Greg. That's a clear answer, Greg said apologetically. Voss nodded, packing her equipment. I've got enough data for now. At the door, she paused. Technician Jordan, this entity has imprinted on you. Its neural patterns change distinctly when interacting with you. Imprinted, Greg echoed. Like a duckling? In layman's terms, yes, Voss replied. My analysis suggests an 87% probability it sees you as a parental figure or primary caregiver. Greg stared at her, then at Nova, now hovering contentedly at his shoulder. You're joking. A Star Eater thinks I'm its dad? Voss allowed a small smile. The universe is full of surprises, Technician Jordan. I'll report to Commander Zelor. After she left, Greg sank onto his bed, Nova bobbing beside him. So you see me as your dad, huh? He asked. Nova pulsed once. Yes, and curled a tendril around his wrist affectionately. Well, Greg sighed, I always wanted kids. Didn't expect my first to be a cosmic entity that could devour solar systems. Nova's glow brightened to a warm, contented gold. The reprieve was brief. 4 hours later, Greg's quarters were invaded by a delegation. Commander Zelor, Dr. Voss, and a holographic projection of General Tarnvex, the sector's highest-ranking coalition officer. The general, a centurion with metallic blue skin and glowing cybernetic eyes, surveyed Greg and Nova with stern disapproval. This situation is unprecedented and unacceptable, his voice boomed. An apex predator juvenile loose on a coalition station. The risk is incalculable. With respect, General, Voss interjected, my tests show this specimen is not currently a threat. It's in early development and shows remarkable restraint. Dr. Voss, Tarnvex dismissed, these creatures mature rapidly. Today it eats radiation badges. Tomorrow it could drain our sun. Nova, sensing the tension, hovered closer to Greg, its glow dimming to a cautious blue. If I may, General, Greg spoke up, surprised by his boldness. Nova has shown intelligence and the ability to learn. It understands boundaries and communicates basic concepts. With time? Time is what we cannot afford, Tarnvex cut him off. The Coalition Security Council has been informed. They've ordered the entity's immediate transfer to our research facility on Proxima Station. Greg's stomach dropped. Proxima's facility was rumored to be a weapons development hub. And what happens to Nova there? Tarnvex's eyes narrowed. That's classified. Zelaur's mandibles clicked uncomfortably. General, perhaps we should consider the xenobiologist's findings. If the entity has imprinted on Technician Jordan, then Jordan will accompany it to Proxima, Tarnvex declared. A familiar presence may keep it docile during transport. His hologram vanished before Greg could protest. Zelaur turned to Greg. I'm sorry, Technician. The General's authority supersedes mine in security matters. Voss looked troubled. Proxima's methods aren't always ethical, especially with unique specimens. Greg felt Nova press closer, its tendrils wrapping around his arm as if sensing his distress. So they want to weaponize it, turn it into a star killer for the Coalition. Neither Zelor nor Voss denied it. After they left, Greg paced his quarters, mind racing. Nova followed, its glow shifting between anxious purple and worried red. Hey, it's okay, Greg said, trying to sound reassuring despite his fear. I won't let them hurt you. Nova pulsed twice. No, and projected rapid light patterns Greg couldn't decipher. I don't understand, he admitted. The creature drifted to Greg's terminal, somehow activating it despite the lockdown. The screen displayed a star map, zooming to a remote region beyond Coalition space. Is that your home? Greg asked. Nova pulsed once. Yes. And something else is there? Something important? Another yes, followed by a complex light pattern. Greg studied the coordinates. That's past the Cygnus Rift. Nothing's supposed to be out there but dead space. Nova's glow intensified, projecting a massive energy signature onto the screen, one dwarfing the largest known stars. Greg's realization hit like a shockwave. Your parent, your real parent is out there looking for you, isn't it? Nova pulsed once emphatically. And if the Coalition experiments on you, tries to weaponize you, Greg didn't finish. The implications were clear. An enraged apex predator parent could make a supernova seem trivial. 6 hours later, Greg and Nova boarded the shuttle to Proxima Station. Nova was housed in a specialized energy field, comfortable but designed to suppress its abilities. Greg sat beside the containment unit, keeping up a steady stream of reassuring chatter, despite the armed guards watching closely. The shuttle crew included a security officer, a pilot, Dr. Voss, who volunteered to monitor Nova, and Ambassador Lyra Thal, a last-minute addition to assess the diplomatic ramifications of detaining an apex predator offspring. Lyra Thal, a tall, elegant being with iridescent skin and galaxy-like eyes, addressed Greg as the shuttle departed Minerva Station. "Technician Jordan, I understand you formed a unique bond with the entity." "Her name's Nova," Greg corrected gently. "And yes, we've developed a way to communicate." Lyra Thal nodded thoughtfully. "Remarkable. In Coalition history, there's no record of peaceful interaction with an apex predator. They're usually encountered during cataclysmic stellar events." Voss, monitoring Nova's field, looked up. "That may be because we've only met adults. This juvenile is in a formative stage, adapting its behavior based on its environment." "In other words," Greg translated, "she's a kid, and she's learning." Larathal's eyes widened. If true, the diplomatic implications are profound. The security officer, a gruff tan named Valance, scoffed. "It's a star-eater. You can't negotiate with something that devours solar systems for breakfast." Nova's glow darkened at his tone, her tendrils pressing against the containment field. "Easy," Greg murmured. "He's just scared of what he doesn't understand." Valance gripped his weapon. "I understand enough. Those things wiped out the Arcturus colony 50 years ago. 3 million dead when their sun was drained in minutes." "That was an adult, likely starving or threatened," Voss pointed out. "This juvenile shows no such aggression," Valance muttered under his breath. The tense exchange was cut short by an alarm from the pilot's console. "Energy anomaly detected," the pilot announced. "Massive signature at coordinates 227 by 184. Greg's heart sank. He knew what it meant. The view screen activated, revealing a distant point where space itself seemed to warp. Stars bent around a colossal, pulsating presence that made Nova look like a firefly next to a supernova. Nova emitted rapid light pulses, straining against her field. "It's the parent," Greg said quietly. "Nova's been calling for help." Larathal's composure wavered. "Coalition records show no apex predator has ever approached civilized space so directly." "Because it's searching for its child," Greg said, "and we're the ones holding her." The massive entity accelerated, crossing vast distances in seconds. The shuttle's sensors blared as calculations predicted intercept in under 3 minutes. Valance raised his weapon. "We need to jettison that thing before its parent rips us apart." "No." Greg stepped in front of Nova's field. "That would make things worse. Nova's the only reason we're still alive." Lyra Thal remained calm. "Technician Jordan is correct. If the parent wanted us destroyed, we'd be gone." Voss studied her instruments. "The juvenile is emitting complex energy patterns, communication. It's likely telling its parent we haven't harmed her." The shuttle shuddered as the apex predator came into visual range, a vast vortex of energy bending light itself. Beside it, Nova was indeed just a child. "Can we communicate with it?" Lyra Thal asked urgently. "I think we already are through Nova," Greg said, placing a hand on the containment field. The ship's comm system activated unprompted, filling the cabin with a harmonic resonance that made Greg's teeth ache and his vision blur. Lyra Thal, with her sensitive auditory system, winced in pain. "It's attempting direct contact," Voss gasped, adjusting her console. The frequencies are beyond our translation matrices. Nova pulsed frantically, her tendrils pressing harder against the field. She needs to be free, Greg realized. Nova can translate. She's the bridge between us and her parent. Absolutely not, Valance objected, raising his weapon. Lyrathal raised a hand. Lower your weapon, Officer Valance. I believe Technician Jordan is right. She turned to Greg. But understand the risk. I'm not wrong, Greg said with more confidence than he felt. He approached the containment controls. Nova won't hurt us. She's been trying to tell us about her parent all along. Taking a deep breath, he deactivated the field. Nova burst free in a flash of jubilant light, circling Greg once before positioning herself between the crew and the view screen, where her enormous parent loomed. The juvenile began emitting intricate patterns of light and energy, her tendrils forming complex geometric shapes. The cabin's resonance shifted, becoming less jarring, more like a structured dialogue. It's working, Voss whispered, staring at her instruments. They're communicating. The parent responded with massive energy waves that somehow spared the shuttle. Nova turned to Greg, extending tendrils in what seemed an invitation. I think she wants me to join the conversation, Greg swallowed hard. That's impossible, Valance protested. Human physiology can't handle that communication. But Nova tugged gently at Greg with her tendrils. Let's try, Lyrathal encouraged. This could be the most significant first contact in Coalition history. Hesitantly, Greg stepped forward, letting Nova's tendrils envelop him. His mind flooded with impressions, not words, but powerful concepts and emotions. Protection, confusion, fear, gratitude, family. These came not only from Nova, but also from the parent, questioning why its offspring was among these tiny beings. Through the connection, Greg projected his memories of finding Nova, protecting her, feeding her, and learning to communicate. He conveyed care and responsibility. The parent's energy shifted from menacing to curious. Through Nova, Greg received a new impression, recognition. It understands, Greg gasped, his voice sounding distant. It knows I've been caring for Nova. The cabin's resonance became almost musical. Nova's tendrils withdrew, though the mental link lingered faintly. What's happening? Lyrathal asked cautiously. Greg struggled to translate. The parent was searching for Nova. They got separated during a cosmic event. She's been looking ever since. She? Voss questioned. Greg shrugged. It's the closest translation. The concept's more complex than our gender terms. He focused on the link. She's grateful I protected Nova, but she wants her child back. Nova pulsed rapidly, creating a counter-rhythm to her parents' resonance. And Nova? Lyrathal asked gently. What does she want? Greg felt the patterns. Nova's torn. She's attached to me, to us, but she also knows her parent. Nova drifted closer, a tendril gently touching Greg's face. Through their bond, Greg understood her intent. She's proposing something like shared custody, he said slowly. Valance choked. Shared custody of an apex predator. That's madness. But Lyrathal was already weighing the possibilities. A cooperative arrangement with apex predators would be unprecedented. It could transform our view of species we've only seen as threats. Outside, the parent pulsed with what Greg sensed was consideration. She's evaluating it, Greg translated. She sees Nova has changed through contact with us. She's curious about what her child has learned. Voss couldn't contain her excitement. If apex predators can be communicated with, their stellar consumption might not be mindless destruction, but a natural process we've misunderstood. The parent's energy stabilized into a steady rhythm. Nova bobbed excitedly, circling Greg. She's agreed, Greg announced, stunned. She'll let Nova maintain contact with us, me specifically, as a cultural exchange. I'd be like a secondary caregiver, teaching Nova about other life forms. And in return? Lyrathal asked sharply, sensing a negotiation. Greg focused on the fading impressions. Nova will teach us about their kind, how they perceive the universe, interact with energy and matter. And they'll avoid coalition space for feeding, only consuming uninhabited, dying, or problematic stars we designate. The implications silenced everyone momentarily. Lyrathal broke the quiet. I must contact the Coalition Council. This exceeds my authority, but I believe this could reshape our cosmic understanding. The parent began to recede from the view screen, its presence lingering watchfully but no longer hostile. Nova settled beside Greg, her tendrils wrapping affectionately around his arm. So, what now? Greg asked, realizing he'd become central to a historic diplomatic breakthrough. Lyrathal smiled faintly. Now, Technician Jordan, I suspect you're due for a promotion. Apex Predator Cultural Liaison has a certain ring, don't you think? Greg looked at Nova, pulsing contentedly. Guess that makes you my official alien kid. Nova brightened to a warm golden hue, shaping a tendril into a thumbs up, a human gesture she'd clearly learned from Greg. Despite everything, Greg laughed. 3 months later, Greg stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned research vessel Harmony, watching Nova demonstrate her growing mastery of matter-energy conversion. The young apex predator had nearly doubled in size, though Dr. Voss assured everyone this was normal growth, not a prelude to stellar consumption. Impressive control, Voss noted, now part of the apex predator research team. She can transmute elements with 99.7% efficiency. Greg nodded proudly. Nova's been practicing. Watch this. At his signal, Nova focused her energy into a tight spiral, extracting hydrogen atoms from a sample container. Before their eyes, the hydrogen compressed and transformed into a small diamond, hovering within Nova's energy field. Show off, Greg chuckled as Nova deposited the diamond in his palm. But very cool. Ambassador Lyrathal, now the official diplomat to the Apex Predators, entered with Commander Zelaur. The Coalition Council is impressed with your reports, Lyrathal announced. They've approved expanding the Cultural Exchange Program. Zelaur's mandibles clicked in amazement. 3 months ago, if someone had said we'd be collaborating with apex predators instead of fearing them, I'd have ordered a psych evaluation. Life's full of surprises, Greg agreed, tucking the diamond into his pocket. His uniform now bore the insignia of his new role, a star with a human hand overlaid, a far cry from his days unclogging alien sanitation systems. Nova drifted over to greet the newcomers, her communication now advanced enough to project simple concepts directly. Friends, came the impression in everyone's minds. A method Nova had learned was gentler for humanoids than full apex communication. Indeed we are, Lyrathal replied, now at ease with Nova. And your parent, how is she adapting to our arrangement? Nova pulsed thoughtfully. Mother learns, watches, curious about small energy beings. Small energy beings, Greg repeated with a grin. Guess that's us from her perspective. The ship's comm activated. Cultural Liaison Jordan, the pilot said. We're nearing the rendezvous coordinates. The senior apex predator has arrived. Greg felt a familiar, nervous flutter. Meetings with Nova's parents still daunted him, despite their growing trust. Acknowledged. We're ready. The view screen showed the vast, swirling form of Nova's parent near a dying star, designated by the Coalition for Apex Consumption after confirming no inhabited worlds would be affected. Nova brightened, pulsing rapid light patterns. Mother greets Dad Greg, she communicated, using the term she'd adopted for Greg. Greg still found it surreal to be the adoptive parent of a cosmic entity capable of rearranging matter. "Send my greetings, too," Greg said. Nova transmitted, and the parent responded with a complex energy pattern, partially translated by the ship's systems. Mother acknowledges Greg, caretaker. Expresses satisfaction with offspring's development. "High praise," Zelor observed. "You should be proud, Liaison Jordan." Greg watched Nova engage in an elaborate energy exchange with her parent, a playful educational bonding ritual documented by Voss. The two spun intricate patterns, occasionally drawing small energy bursts from the star. "You know," Greg said thoughtfully, "when I joined the Coalition Maintenance Corps, they promised I'd see the universe. I didn't expect to end up co-parenting a star-eating entity." Lyrathal smiled. "The universe works in mysterious ways." "Indeed," Greg agreed, watching Nova show off her skills. "And to think this started because I was in the wrong maintenance shaft at the wrong time. Or perhaps the right time," Voss suggested. Nova returned to the ship, passing through a specially designed hull section. She sought Greg, circling him excitedly. "Mother approves learning. Says Dad Greg teaches well." "That's a relief," Greg chuckled. "I'd hate to disappoint your mom. She could eat our son." Nova projected amusement, familiar with Greg's humor. "Mother says next visit, bring Greg to Dying Star. Show how we feed properly." Greg blinked. "Your mother's inviting me to a family dinner?" "Yes. Family feeds together." Zalaur's antennae twitched rapidly. "That's unprecedented. No non-apex has observed their feeding rituals." Lyrathal calculated the diplomatic significance. "This is a remarkable opportunity for deeper exchange." Greg looked at Nova, waiting expectantly. Despite the invitation's extraordinary nature, he was touched by its universal meaning. Nova's parent accepted him as part of their strange family. "Tell your mother I'd be honored," Greg said sincerely. Nova pulsed with joy, her tendrils briefly embracing Greg in their version of a hug. Later, in his quarters with Nova resting in her energy containment nest, now a cozy home rather than a cage, Greg recorded his log. "Day 92 of the Apex Cultural Exchange Program," he spoke softly, mindful of Nova's rest cycle. "Sometimes I can't believe how my life has changed. 3 months ago, I was fixing recycling systems and griping about my career. Now I'm raising a juvenile apex predator and preparing for an interstellar family dinner with a being that could snack on our sun." He glanced at Nova, her glow a peaceful blue. "The scientists are thrilled with their discoveries, the diplomats are celebrating the treaty, and the military's relieved we've turned a potential enemy into an ally. But for me," Greg paused, searching for words, "the most incredible part is simpler. I've become a dad to the unlikeliest child in the galaxy." Nova stirred, a tendril reaching toward Greg as if sensing him even in sleep. "And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything," Greg concluded, smiling as he ended the recording. The next morning, as Greg prepared for a Coalition Science Council meeting, Nova zipped around their quarters, projecting rapid-fire images and impressions too fast to process. "Whoa, slow down," Greg laughed, struggling with his uniform collar. "One thought at a time." Nova pulsed apologetically, focusing on a single impression. Other juveniles coming. Greg froze. "Other? You mean more young apex predators?" "Yes. 3. Curious about small beings. Want to learn like Nova. 3 more." Greg felt lightheaded. "Your mother didn't mention this was becoming a full exchange program." Nova projected amusement. "Not all stay. Visit only. Meet Dad Greg. Famous now among kind." "Famous," Greg echoed weakly. "I'm famous among apex predators." "Yes. Dad Greg teaches new way. Not just consume, communicate, create. Greg sat heavily on his bed. Well, that's flattering, I guess. His calm chimed urgently. Jordan, Lirathal's voice carried rare excitement. Our sensors detected 3 apex juvenile signatures approaching the rendezvous. Did Nova mention this? Just found out myself, Greg replied, glancing at Nova, who projected an innocent shrug-like impression. Apparently, I'm running an apex predator daycare now. Lyrathal's tone turned thoughtful. This could expand our understanding. If multiple juveniles learn to interact peacefully with other species, one step at a time, Ambassador, Greg cautioned. Let's see how this goes. After the call, Greg turned to Nova with a mock stern pose. You could have warned me. Nova pulsed contritely. Wanted to surprise Dad Greg. Good surprise, Greg laughed despite himself. Jury's still out on that, kiddo. As they headed to the conference room for an emergency meeting, crew members nodded respectfully to Greg, a stark change from his invisible maintenance days. Zalor, Voss, and a hologram of General Tarnvex, whose initial hostility had softened to reluctant respect, awaited. Liaison Jordan, Tarnvex acknowledged. Your ward has been more influential than we expected. Nova's been communicating with her kind, Greg explained as Nova hovered proudly beside him, sharing what she's learned about us. Now others want to learn too. This is unprecedented, Voss said, her scientific enthusiasm uncontained. Zalor focused on Nova. Are these newcomers as peaceful as your offspring? Greg relayed the question. Nova pulsed thoughtfully. Young ones curious, not hungry. Mother taught discipline. We'll behave for Dad Greg. Nova says they'll be well behaved, Greg translated, adding, but I'd suggest having radiation feeds ready. Hungry juveniles might get grabby with our power systems. The meeting dove into planning and security protocols, but Greg's mind wandered to the broader implications. What began as a chance encounter in a maintenance shaft was reshaping the relationship between apex predators and the sentient universe. 2 days later, aboard Harmony at the rendezvous point, Greg stood on the observation deck with Nova vibrating excitedly beside him. Through the viewports, they watched 3 smaller energy signatures approach, each unique in color and pattern, but unmistakably apex predators. They're beautiful, Greg murmured, genuinely awed. Nova projected pride, family cousins. Want to meet Dad Greg? Lyrathal joined them. We're making history today, Jordan, the first diplomatic delegation of apex predator juveniles. As the 3 young entities neared, pulsing with curiosity and excitement, Greg felt a profound sense of responsibility. Somehow, through bizarre circumstances, he'd become not just Nova's caretaker, but a bridge between vastly different cosmic life forms. Well, Greg said, straightening his uniform, time to meet the extended family. Nova pulsed with joy, circling Greg once before moving to greet her kin. As the observation deck glowed with the light of 4 apex juveniles exchanging intricate energy patterns, Greg was struck by the absurdity and wonder of it all. From waste management technician to cosmic diplomat in mere months. From fixing pipes to fostering understanding between species that had never communicated. The Coalition Club of Formidable Species now has 4 juveniles with a human dad, he murmured, echoing a thought from the beginning. Who could have imagined babysitting an apex predator would lead to this? Nova, overhearing, projected a clear impression everyone received. Not end, Dad Greg, just beginning. Watching the 4 glowing entities harmonize in playful energy patterns, Greg Jordan, former technician, current apex predator cultural liaison, and unlikely adoptive father, couldn't help but agree. The universe had only begun to unveil its strangest and most wondrous possibilities.